उधर कोई बैठा।
Hello. Hello, Francis. Very nice to meet you. Hello, hello. Thanks. Thanks, see you in a bit. I let Alan that check that he's actually done it. But frankly, I run it. Yeah. They don't send anything out without telling me. It's very good. So low. I'm sorry.
Well, good afternoon to you all, and thank you all very much for coming along for this afternoon's press conference. I'm Francis Moore, a member of the British Shadow Cabinet, and formerly chairman of the British Conservative Party. This is my colleague Richard Spring, also like me a member of Parliament and vice chairman of the Conservative Party, and just wanted to take the opportunity to explain what we've been doing here, what our program has been, and we're happy to answer any questions anyone might have. It's lovely to be here, first visit to the Maldives for both Richard and myself. As I think people know, the Conservative Party in Britain has a close relationship with the MDP here in the Maldives, a newly set up, relatively the last few years, party. It's one of our sister parties. The Conservative Party works with parties of the centre-right throughout the world. We must work with well over 100 different parties, and we share ideas, share knowledge, and so on. These are close working relationships. We've had a number of really useful meetings with our colleagues in the MDP. I stress, as I said at a meeting last night, that it is not our mission to interfere with the elections that will be held here in the Maldives. Our concern solely is with there being elections that are free and fair, and the only deciding factor in those elections is the freely expressed choice of the Maldivian people. And that's a major concern that we have. We've had a series of other meetings with people this morning. We met with the Speaker of the Majlis. We met with the Commissioner for Police. We met with the Minister in the President's office. And we met with the Minister for Legal Reform. We took the chance to explain what we're doing and to raise various issues with them, particularly stressing our need for our concern that the elections should be genuinely free and fair. It isn't just a question of rules, it's a question of what happens on the ground, and it isn't just a question of what happens on polling day, it's a question of the way in which matters are conducted in the run-up to polling day itself. We raised concerns about human rights abuses that have taken place in the Maldives. We particularly raised concerns that there are still a number of politically motivated prosecutions of prominent figures in the political world, not just in one party or another, and that some of those charges in many cases have been left unresolved, neither brought to court so they can be dealt with properly by the courts, nor properly withdrawn. And we've made it very clear that the international community would not regard elections as being free and fair where there were political charges of this nature hanging over people who might be participants in those elections. It is absolutely essential that those charges are dealt with. Either if there is genuine substance in one or two of those cases, then they should be brought to the court so they can be dealt with and cases tried and resolved. In all other cases, where it's a hangover from previous ways of behaving, previous regime, previous behavior, then it should be dealt with and those charges withdrawn. Just to repeat a little of what I said last night at the meeting some of you may have been at, countries that are the subject of great international attention, and it should be understood that the Maldives, when it faces its first what should be free elections later this year, there will be intense international interest in the way those elections are conducted. Maldives will be under the microscope of the world's media and political, the political world across the world. And people will want to see that those elections are genuinely free. They will want to see that under the new constitution coming into place, that the government that is there to be there in the future, whatever its complexion, whoever is to be the president after the elections, that is a regime which is free from corruption, that is a government that's run for the people of the Maldives, not for the government, not for the benefit of the government. They will want to see that there is a genuinely independent judiciary that can uphold the rights of individuals and uphold property and commercial rights freely in the courts. They will want to see that there are open markets and that this is a good place to do business. Now, just make a further point. Obviously, a major and important industry in the Maldives is tourism, and rightly because it's a wonderful place with wonderful people. The Maldives attract people from all around the world to visit and to holiday here. There is a growing phenomenon across the world, the phenomenon of ethical consumers as well as ethical investors. People who make judgments not just about the quality of the service and the quality of the place that they're visiting, but also about the sort of regime that runs the country that they're visiting. And there will be, particularly with the sort of visitors that the Maldives attracts, who tend to be better off people who will tend to be opinion formers in their own country. They will increasingly want to be confident that it's a country which is not corrupt, a country whose government has been genuinely elected, genuinely represents the freely expressed will of its people, and that in the unless that can be very clearly demonstrated before the eyes of the world, then that would itself cause damage to the future of the Maldives. So we've made all these points. Strongly, making it clear, as I say, all the way along the line, that it's not at all our purpose to interfere with the result, try to influence the result of any elections that are held here later this year. Simply, our concern is that the Maldives should be genuinely democratic, freely electing its future government without fear or favour, with a country that has genuinely and unequivocally and irreversibly joined the brotherhood of free democratic nations. Thank you. Richard.
I'd just like to briefly add a few things. As Francis has correctly said, over the next few months, the eyes of the world will be upon these islands. And it's very important that the constitutional process is successfully resolved. This seems to be bringing itself towards a conclusion, and that these elections take place on a free and fair basis. And this is what we've actually made very plain. I'd just like to say this, that this is a hugely exciting time in the long history of these islands. They have a unique culture, unique history, language, and a unique geographic position, because what's happening in the world is that the tilt of influence in the world is moving from the west, namely Europe and America, towards the east. And you're seeing the rise of countries like India and China, the economic success stories all over Asia. And the geographic position of these islands is hugely significant because they are the gateway to what is happening in the East. And that is of immense long-term importance. Of course, there are huge challenges. There's a very young population. There are issues of education, of transport, of healthcare. There's certainly a significant drugs problem, not unique here. It's certainly all over the world this is becoming an increasing problem. So this is an exciting time. But I would like to just pay tribute to everybody who's been involved in this process to change so quickly from one form of governance into what is emerging as a democracy with different political parties competing with ideas, to do this in the orderly way that is now being undertaken and I hope it will continue, is a remarkable tribute to the people of these islands and the common sense of everybody involved, and we hope in that spirit will continue. I would like to just make one point. I'm a governor of something called the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, and as Francis said, the Conservative Party has links to many centre-right parties all over the world. What the Westminster Foundation for Democracy does is on a number of levels. Of course, they're party-to-party relationships, but what they're very good at, what the organisation is good at, is to actually help in parliamentary capacity building. One of the key elements of the democratic profile that is emerging in this country is the strengthening of Parliament. That involves the role of the Speaker, that involves the strengthening of the committee system to hold the executive to account. And in our very open and frank discussions we've had today, we've offered the services of the British Parliament to assist in any way to help train those who are involved in backing up the parliamentary process, to help draw up the rules and regulations, if you like, of how committees work to make them most effective. For example, it's crucially important that members of Parliament understand what is in the budgets, where the money is being spent. This is all done in a transparent way. So apart from the very worthwhile discussions we've had about the democratic process which is emerging in this country, and where indeed the world is now watching, and the fantastic opportunities that arise from that, we have very practically suggested ideas about how we can assist at a parliamentary level, and that has been very much welcomed, for example, by the Minister in the President's office and everybody else we've spoken with. And we've also talked about one other issue, which is the way, for example, the police operate in a democratic society, how they must learn to develop community relationships. The Commission is very aware of this, and the fact that there are police officers from other parts of the world who are helping in this process. So the will is there, and it's really a wonderful time to be here for us as Member of Parliament to actually see this process underway, and we wish everybody involved very well indeed.
Yeah. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
I'm from New Delhi. I have two questions. That is regarding the issue of transitional government and presidential election.
Yeah.
The first question is, do you think it is necessary to have a transitional government before election? The second question is, as you know, MDP thinks that the DRP candidate is not eligible for a free and fair election. What do you think? That's the two questions.
On the second question, that's a matter of interpretation of the Constitution. I'm not a constitutional lawyer and can't comment on that. And the reality is that that will need to be explored properly by the constitutional lawyers who can express a view on whether it's the new constitution permits it. I gather it puts in place term limits for the president. And for the future, the question is whether that applies to the service the time he's already spent, which I gather is 30 years, which is a long time to be president of a country. There aren't very many leaders in genuine democracies who have remained in place for that long. The public tends to want to change generally well before that, but that's that's not something we can comment on in the law. On the question of a transitional government, there are clear advantages in having a transitional government in which, in the interim period between the coming into effect of the new constitution and elections, that parties, that leaders from all across the parties come together in an interim cabinet. The advantages would be, it would be a symbol of commitment to change. It would give greater confidence that the apparatus of the state could not be used in order to influence the outcome of the elections. But it would also give, I think, to people outside, particularly people who may be looking to invest in the Maldives, a sense that decisions that are being made in this interim period command a consensus across the parties, so that whatever the complexion of the government that gets elected and whatever the identity of the president who is elected in the elections later this year, that there would be continuity of decision taking, that decisions taken in the meantime would have widespread support across the political spectrum, and so people could be confident that they those decisions would not be re-examined. So I think there is a strong case for having a transitional interim government, a government which brings together all the parties.
I just add one thing, that of course there would be a finite length of time for such an arrangement, because we have presidential elections, we have parliamentary elections and local elections, and the matter of the timing of those does still need to be resolved. But even if there was no formal arrangement, it's just hugely important that the political parties, including the ruling government party of the president, work extremely cooperatively. This is a unique moment in the history of the Maldives to actually resolve these constitutional questions and the checks and balances between the executive and parliament and the judiciary and everything that goes from it. So even if there's no formal structure, it's hugely important that there is a consensus across the party political divide that actually these are the key objectives that everybody can sign up to. And that is the real objective. And look at the future. Of course, when you have emerged out of a system which was not democratic, there will be concerns. And of course, there has been a history of people who have suffered hardship because of their political views. The most important thing is that in the elections which are to follow, that they are adequately and properly monitored. That will be done by the EU, by the Commonwealth. There are discussions going on, even as we sit here today, with those organizations to deal with this question of monitoring, because people in this country have to be satisfied that they are free and fair, and the world has to be satisfied that they are free and fair. And so really we are looking to the future now, and what has happened in the past has upset some and made others happy. The key now is to get these elections right, to the build-up to them, so that they go through smoothly and satisfactorily in the interests of the whole country.
Well, Rich is absolutely right that the future is the key, but I don't think anyone would seriously pretend that there have been free and fair elections in the past. When political parties have been banned, when there have been prosecutions mounted against leading politicians who are opponents of the regime, that makes it impossible for elections to be free and fair, and I don't think anyone would argue otherwise. I think that's why there's now this general consensus now in favour of genuine reform. If there hadn't been problems before, there wouldn't need to be a reform now.
And can I just say that every single politician is using the Barack Obama phrase, change, because there is a mood in this country which maybe a few years ago politicians might have talked about stability, at least some. Now everybody is talking to change, and that is simply because people in this country want that change. It's now to make it successful.
Got a microphone there.
Alisha from the FM News. Regarding the recently leaked letter by the Commissioner of Police, Adam Zahir, on allegations that the British Conservative Party was conspiring to overthrow the government. What do you have to say on this matter? And also, you said that you had the discussion with the Commissioner of Police, right? So was this issue discussed?
Yes, it was, and I'm glad to say we escaped without being arrested. And we had a very good humoured conversation with the Commissioner for Police. I did see, I think it was about a year ago, this correspondence which suggested after our colleague Gary Streeter, who's chairman of the Conservative Party's international office, visited here, I think there was some genuine misunderstandings about the nature of free and open discussions between democratic parties. It is not an unusual thing to happen. As I say, it is not our purpose to interfere with the outcome of genuine elections. Our concern is merely to work with a sister party where we have a lot of values in common. Democracies, genuine democracies, require there to be political parties, and they do not spring fully formed into life overnight. The British Conservative Party has been in existence for longer than any other party anywhere in the history of democracy. That doesn't mean to say we haven't got a great deal to learn from other parties, and I say very openly that there are things that we've learned from our colleagues in the MDP in the few days we've been here. So the working together of parties in this way is a well-established phenomenon across the democratic world, and there may have been some misunderstanding about that, but I think all of that's now, I think it had already been completely cleared up, and it was certainly not a matter that was raised with us. It was a matter that I raised with the Commissioner, because there clearly had been many months ago some concern expressed.
Can I just add, we had a very productive meeting with the Commission, which we did touch on that, but we also talked about the challenges of policing in this country, including, the difficulty of the drugs trade, etc. And I'd finally say to him that never in my wildest fantasies did I ever regard myself as James Bond, if that is any consolation.
Yes, question now. All right. Hold a microphone.
I'm Fiaz from Harvard Daily. Just you have said you have concern about political charges. Do you request the government to drop these political charges?
Well, we've said it must be resolved either way. If there are genuine charges that reflect real harmful criminal activity, obviously they should be brought before the court. They should have been brought before the court already. And if there's genuine evidence, it can be heard and dealt with. It's pretty clear that that might be the case in a handful, one or two cases, but overwhelmingly these are charges that were brought in a different era, when different concerns, different anxieties abounded, and I think a pretty widespread acceptance that that was another period, and the line should be drawn, the slate wiped clean, so that the elections can go ahead without people feeling any constraints, without there being the sort of suspicion that is aroused by the reluctance to withdraw those charges. And I think we had very good conversations about all of this, and we've made our concerns plain. It is, as far as I think the international community would be concerned in terms of judging whether the elections were free and fair, it is something that's pretty much an absolute necessity to happen.
Can I just add that this is a matter for the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General, we were given assurances, was actually looking into these particular issues. And if I could just say that we believe that this should be speeded up, and any assistance that we given to the Attorney General should be, because, as Francis has just said, this is something overhanging this whole process. It has to be resolved one way or another, and really should be got out of the way. And we were given pretty clear assurances that this matter was being looked at, and that additional assistance had been given to the Attorney General to come to a resolution of these cases. And so we're very happy with communicating that today.
And I'm sure we're going to be kept posted with developments on that front. Now, any other questions, anyone? Good. I think we're done then. Thank you very much indeed, all of you for coming. All right.
I just confirmed. Yes. Yes.